Hello, Barbara. Hello, everyone. Michaela, you're here. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you. Thank you. So let's just wait for a minute before everybody joins. So those were two rooms with like the worst connectivity, and it showed on the test. It could have been worse, so we've taken some pictures for you, and plus you already know some of those stories because I shared them with you in the tours before. So we'll make it up to you for some of the unseen exhibits. We'll have some photos, and we have the Zoom option, so which is amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Вот опять просят вас поблагодарить за все, что вы делаете, за то, что вы говорите, за то, что вы. So thank you, Alice, for everything, what you're saying, what you're doing, no matter what. Yes, because we don't really feel like super safe saying that. But if more people keep saying that, this insanity should be put to an end. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, so I think it's time to begin. So 5 minutes we have already. Yes, we have 5 minutes. Okay, so let's do it with the previous room. So I switch the camera again. I will be standing somewhere in the doorway. If it doesn't work, I return here, and there is like no more coming back to that issue with the Zoom. It doesn't really work. Okay, пожалуйста. Тогда я буду увеличивать. Окей.
Карточки мы показали?
Угу. Карточки мы показываем.
Отлично.
Нет, это так. Я не знаю, видно, нет? So please let me know if you. I think it's a little bit blurry, but.
Ну, в принципе, я могу цифру назвать, просто сам факт таблицы, которая здесь, это таблица, как люди делились на категории, и им выдавали определенную норму, ну, вот здесь конкретно хлеба.
So that table, which is a bit blurry due to the Zoom, but I have it for you. Hold on. So it's basically how people would be split into different social groups, according to which they would be given their ratio of food. So you can see it here.
Первая норма была установлена 18 июля, еще до того, как блокада началась, ну, уже когда началась война.
So the first group, the ratio was established like in early July, so just soon after the war started.
И население, ну, как мы уже там говорили, делилось на рабочих, служащих, иждивенцев и детей. И рабочие получали 800 граммов хлеба в сутки, служащие 600, иждивенцы 10 по 400. Это на самом деле не маленькая норма, она была достаточно нормальная, у людей оставалась еда, потом они очень жалели, что они в это время не начинали сушить сухари, не начинали готовиться, потому что никто не ждал, что блокада будет долго. Всем людям говорили, что это все быстро закончится. Ну, была своя пропаганда.
Okay, so you see here, as I said, those are the norms as of the very beginning of the war. Well, I think it's Christmas. And again, so the 5 like social groups, starting from the unemployed, then the children, then the workers of the schools, and then the workers of the factories. So they were given their ratios. Like the biggest ratio was 800 grams, 800 грамм, у работников. So the factory workers would be given like 800 grams, which is a lot. But people were told that the siege, that the war, it was just war, it wasn't a siege then, would be very quick, and things would be over soon. So people wouldn't even care to go and pick their ratio, like every day. And many people later on would regret about not having made some, like dry bread. We call it sukhar, the dry bread, or at least any provision, because then it would become only much less than that.
Минимальная норма уже 20 ноября была установлена, и тогда рабочие стали 250 граммов хлеба получать, все остальные 125.
So by November, the workers of the factories would get 250 grams of bread per day, and all the rest 125. And it would last 4 месяца, да, по-моему, так было, до апреля.
Нет, это было до декабря, в декабре немножко норму увеличили чуть-чуть, да, чтобы просто людям моральный дух поднять, не потому что лучше все стало.
So this would be the lowest. In December 1941, they would increase it a little bit, but not because something's changed for the better, but just to, to elevate the spirits, of the people. Yeah, so increase it, but just real bits. Да. So, and here is a photo of the museum exhibit. There you go. I also showed it to you. There you go. So this is the loaf of bread. It's 125, no? 125 grams. So this is what an unemployed and actually everyone, by the workers of the factories, would get per day, provided that they work.
Вот этот хлеб, это не такой, какой мы сейчас в наше мирное время едим. Вот этот хлеб состоял из различных примесей, там муки было 50%, только все остальное это различные примеси.
And you have to understand, that's not the bread that you could buy from a bakery and, okay, get by with it. There was probably 30% of real flour, but of the worst quality ever. Then sawdust, cellulose. So, well, quite really hardly edible things would be added just to make it at least look edible.
Люди делили такой кусочек на несколько частей, потому что если ты съешь его сразу, то у тебя вообще ничего будет есть в течение дня, и люди старались на 3 части разделить, на завтрак, на обед, ужин, потихонечку все есть.
Yes, and you can imagine, so this small loaf of bread, people would split into like 3, 4 portions and would eat it during the day. So, well, no wonder so many people died, right? Okay, so, and in relation to this, look at the exhaustion, the starvation, the dystrophy, which was the #1 diagnosis for the people of the Leningrad.
Да, дистрофия все было очень сложно, потому что, естественно, до того, как люди голодали, эта болезнь не была изучена, потому что не было смысла изучать, никто с этим не сталкивался. И поэтому, когда людей удавалось эвакуировать из Ленинграда, куда-то в другие области, они умирали уже в эвакуации, потому что начинали есть много.
And you know that given enough food, to people who suffer from dystrophy was not really an option. And we know of many cases then when already persons suffering from dystrophy for a long time, taken into evacuation and given food, those people wouldn't make it. They wouldn't make it. They wouldn't survive because it wasn't the cure. So dystrophy was a very, very serious disease, and the curing it was difficult. Да. Сейчас покажем, что ели. Так, вот. So these exhibits are actually there, so behind that man, but we don't want to risk losing you again. So the menu, a la carte.
Это блокадный шоколад, столярный клей. Раньше он делался из костей животных, его варили и делали.
So this is the carpenter's glue. Actually, it's the glue. It was made of natural, organic materials. It was boiled from, let's see, the fish residue, and so it was some sort of protein, but it was referred to as the siege chocolate. So you could just boil it and make a soup from it. Yeah, a siege soup.
Вот эти все изделия, просто из них, и ремень, да, кожа вынималась из изделия, кожу отваривали, отваривали тоже кожаный пиль, какие-то там элементы питательные.
Then you see over here the belt, leather belt. It would be basically wound on the mechanisms, just in factories. But it was extruded. It was taken off from from everywhere. Leather belts would be boiled. They first of all would be they would be placed into water for like several hours because they could have been painted. It could have different like poisonous substances, because we know of the fact when people just after having eaten the unwashed belt, they just died because of the poisoning. And then they would be boiled for hours, and then you could eat it. So that was leather, animal leather. А вот это что такое?
Это остатки от производства подсолнечного масла. По-нашему это дуран, жмых.
Жмых. Okay, and so these pieces is basically pressed residues from the sunflower oil making. I'm not sure, but the words, okay, it's the dry residue, right? So those sunflower seeds. Это тоже ели, да?
Да, их просто и сухими ели, и супы из них делали, вот хлеб добавляли в том числе.
So they would eat it like this. They could add it to bread, anywhere. Yes, anything to survive, anything to provide your family with. Absolutely. Это я им тоже рассказывала. So I mentioned many stories of how the animals, the stray animals, then would disappear from the streets. Cats, dogs, anyone, and then people had to make sure if they wanted to just to save their pets, they would have to carry them with them. But further on, if you were to face the horrible choice of feeding your child or your cat, so what would you choose, right? So yeah, you know those stories. And of course, я прям не могу не показать, потому что у нас был тур про Таню Савичеву. So last weekend, before this hell started, and it was a peaceful world, this is the museum window with the actual, this is the copy with a same size copy of the diary of Tanya Savicheva. You remember that girl? She's sometimes referred to as the Anne Frank of Leningrad. Well, she was a Russian girl. She was just a school girl, and she had a diary where she would keep records of her family members dying one after another. So the original diary is in the archives, and it was probably just shown once or twice. So it's fragile, it's incredibly fragile. So it is just the copy of Tanya Savicheva's diary. Yes, our own Anne Frank, of course, and you can imagine how many these girls and boys died. Yes, and this is a close-up of the diary. So basically, it was just she would state the name of the family member and the date and time when the family member died. And Tanya didn't make it. She was taken into even evacuation, but she died there from the tuberculosis of bones. Туберкулез чего? Костей? Чего там? Okay, tuberculosis. Well, she died from exhaustion, so it's the changes that the body is given due to starvation they are irreversible almost. And this is how one of the same woman changed within... Сколько там я просто не вижу? So this is the first May 1941. May 1942. And this is like the fall of 1942. This is one of the same woman. You see how she changed within 1 year and a half. Yes. Okay. Да. Вот это, да? Да. So just a few more exhibits from that room is important. So we're gonna spend some time with photographs and then we move on to the actual exhibits. Да.
Первая блокадная зима самая холодная, температура опускается до минус 40 градусов, что не свойственно Ленинграду. Почему-то эта зима оказалась такой. Замерзает водопровод, канализация, люди начинают ходить за водой на различные водоемы. На Невском проспекте кругу Кранвагона.
So this is like a small 3D installation. Как это называется? Диорама тоже. Small diorama. Diagram. So this is the Nevsky Avenue. You may probably recognize it's a bit reflected, but this is the Gostiny Dvor shopping mall and the tower, like the telegraph tower here. So the first winter, as you remember from numerous tours, it was the most severe with not really typical temperatures. Like it could drop till like minus 40 degrees Celsius centigrade, and it feels much colder because of the humidity levels. And of course, everything froze and the city was cut off from all the facilities. There was no running water, there was no sewage system working, and people would go to the frozen waters, to the frozen rivers to dig the holes, and to just with buckets of water they would try to kneel, pull with no really strength in their bodies due to the hunger. And here on the Nevsky Avenue, just one of the pipes just bursted, and just the pipe broken, and there was a flooding on the Nevsky Avenue. So people rushed to get some water. That's just how it looked. Yes, exactly, Tracy. No immune system left. Absolutely.
Электричество отключили, люди создавали самодельные лампочки.
So speaking of facilities, So no electricity as well. Up until April, there was no electricity at all. So no trams were running. So people would have to walk on foot miles, to their workplaces, and they had to work, right? So as for the electricity, they would make this. So this was just handmade lamps, like oil lamps. They were extremely dangerous and inflammatory, but there was no choice, right?
Ну и да, отопления не было, очень холодно, температура в помещениях минусовая, -2, -4 градуса, и люди, такие буржуйки, создавали, возле них грелись.
So again, no central heating, no facilities at all. And these were the small stoves, like pot-belly stoves. We call them burjuikas. Actually, they were very popular in the First World War. And some even had them from the First World War, or they could make them from anything. You basically needed a basin for it, something metal, and there you go. And even with these small stoves, burjuika stoves, you would make probably just a few degrees warmer than it was outside. Yeah, and have a look at the typical apartment of the besieged Leningrad.
Стекла заклеивали, чтобы прочнее были, чтобы
Uh-huh.
И мебель здесь еще находится, но так как дров не было, то эта мебель постепенно, книги, обои сжигали.
So what you see is the typical apartment of the besieged Leningrad. You see the crisscross sticky tapes on the glass on the windows to prevent it from the explosions, right? To make sure at least something survived to just protect the apartment from the cold and the winds. Very little furniture, especially the wooden furniture. So this the bookcase is likely to have survived, and then it would have been made into just the wood for stoves. So there was no wood left, and this would be this burjuika stove. I'm not sure if you can really see it well, but there you go. There you go. Да, давайте. So Alice just asked me if we can turn on the alarm signal. Все хорошо. So let's.
Пропаганду среди населения, радио, только само радио Ленинград передавало, не звучал сигнал.
Да. So remember I told you that the radios would have been taken from the population because the Soviet authorities were afraid of the Nazi propaganda in case they could interfere in the frequencies. So it would be taken from the people, and this kind of, I'm not sure, radio that would only be set up for one frequency, the official frequency, they would be used. And this is how people would be getting the signal, the alarms. So it says. Metronome and the metronome, you remember that? Yes. So the metronome basically showed that there was no connection, that the city was not disconnected, and that there was still the connection with the world, with the outer world. Da. Yes, and you asked about the children and where the children would be evacuated, how they would be evacuated. Let's give it a try with the Zoom.
На самом деле очень сложная такая тема, потому что была рассогласованность между руководством страны и руководством города. Что происходит на фронтах? Не говорили правду и считали, что у нас там все хорошо, мы держим все под контролем, все замечательно. Поэтому детей. Вместо того, чтобы отправить на восток страны, их отправляют по направлению к нацистам, и случается трагедия на станции Лычкова, где поезд с детьми расстреливают. После этого родители перестают доверять правительству, перестают отправлять детей в эвакуацию, считают, что лучше пусть они останутся в Ленинграде вместе с ними, потому что, по крайней мере, здесь понятно, что с ними происходит, они их могут видеть. Ну и также люди сами не эвакуировались, потому что им говорили, что война быстро закончится.
Ага. So this is okay. So you asked about the children. So when the thing started, again, you know that the people were told that it will be swift, it will be over soon, right? It will be over soon. And there was like misunderstanding and like very bad coordination between what was going on in the city and what was going on outside. And often the truth wasn't told. And the first attempts to evacuate children, let me try to zoom it in again. There was when it only started in the very beginning, the children would be taken in the wrong direction, just to the direction where the Nazis were. And at one station, как эта станция называлась? Лычкова. So the train with the children was shot. So the children was shot. It was just heavily shot. So the children died. And obviously after that, the people stopped trusting anyone. And well, how can you trust after that, right? So что-то мне забыла сказать.
Из этого родители не эвакуировали детей, не отправляли их для эвакуации, оставляли с собой, потому что, по крайней мере, они видели, что с ребенком происходит, и могли контролировать.
And exactly after that, parents would prefer not to send their children anywhere and keep them next to them in the besieged city. So, and plus, again, the propaganda would keep saying that the war would be over soon, it would be over soon. So, yeah.
Вот там можно над этим синим фоном, если увеличить, повыше. Вот это. Получается, где указывается? Вот Дед Мороз, да. Для детей в январе 42-го года устраивают Новый год, несмотря на то, что все ужасы происходит, устраивают праздник. Но дети, которые приходили на этот праздник, они стояли грустные, дети очень быстро постарели, даже не повзрослели, а постарели. Они были на старичков маленьких похожи. И они стояли, вроде их пытались развеселить, но они думали только о соседнем зале, в котором накрывали стол для них. Потому что они были голодные, естественно, хотели кушать.
So over there, I hope it's a bit blurry, but I think you can see this is the New Year celebration in January 1942, which was the most difficult year, the most difficult winter. So there was a celebration. There was a Father Frost, the Russian version of Santa Claus, you remember from the New Year tours. And the children, they looked more like the old children. So even not like the grown-ups, of course, in their mind, they haven't seen all that. They already were adults in the mentality, but they looked like very small, old people because of that. And there was some entertainment before that, but what they could actually think of is the food that waited for them in the next room.
Потом накормили даже выданные подарки, мандарины сюда.
Мандарины, да.
Подарили детям, и дети с этими подарками шли домой к родителям. Причем не все дети могли даже прийти на праздник, потому что были настолько ослаблены, что многие оставались дома.
Yes, and speaking of the food, there was even given some tangerines. You know, tangerine is the symbol of New Year in Russia. It started in the imperial times, even before the revolution. It was the tradition, and children that had enough strength, to come to the party, they would take some food home to share with their family, share with their loved ones. Okay.
Зато все за наших детей, да, тех созданий, вообще не были виноваты ни в чем.
Yes, so this is difficult. So just let's revenge for the blood and tears of our children.
Граждане говорят, обстреливаться на улице наиболее опасно.
Yeah. Да. So, and you see here, I think it's familiar to you because this is where we started our Siege of Leningrad series a month ago. So you remember, dear citizens, this side of the street is most dangerous when shelling. They were about more than 1,000 of these. They're not plugs; they're actually just notifications, like warning signs painted, with the template on the walls. We have several of them in the city, but they're restored. They were just, this was the reality. And this is, it was sort of like a DJ table, if you can somehow explain it in the modern terms. This was the table from the radio station from which would transmit the signals, the concerts, because there was radio in the city that not only would inform of the signals, right, but also there was poetry. You remember Olga Bergoitsyn, we will mention her further on. So the metronome is here. So people had to survive somehow, right? Yes. Yes. So yes, so Alice is taking us away from the most difficult part. So you remember, so I told you many times that, then you know it. Without me, you know it well, about the road of life. So the road on the frozen waters of Lake Ladoga, 30 kilometers, like 15 miles or so. So this is the Leningrad, the besieged territory. Yes. So this dark gray territory, we call it a bottleneck. Further on, it will be broken, but it's the bottleneck, so occupied by the Nazis. It's exactly the Schlüsselburg, right? So exactly here is the Schlüsselburg, and the fortress was just like here. Yeah, but the city, town Schlüsselburg was occupied. But you remember, the fortress is just like an island very close to it. Yes, and the mainland of the big land, the free land. This is the free territory. And the Lake Ladoga. So before like in September, the cargo, the supplies would be taken by water to Leningrad from the town of Volkhov there, and the Volkhov River to the new Ladoga. Yeah. And then to Asinovets by Lake Ladoga. So the cargo was delivered, the supplies, yes. And then by the railroad to Leningrad. So they had to go like roundabout because Lake Ladoga is quite shallow and the bottom is quite unpredictable and uneven. So they had to make sure they wouldn't sink, they wouldn't hit anything with the bottom. They would have to go like this, waste the precious time, but there was no other option. And winter struck very early, like in November. The ice was already thick enough, and they started working on the icy road. So and then the trucks from New Ladoga. So there was a road to the place called Kabona on the free land, on the mainland, and then 30 kilometers icy road of life to the place here. This to the here. So also the small village Kokorevo. So Kokorevo or Asinovets, so to these territories. Людей начинают эвакуировать во дворе, по Ладоге люди часто пешком пытались прийти, очень много людей умерло на этом пути, и поэтому дорога жизни бывает дорога. Yes, well, obviously it is known as the road of life, but the thing is, it was also referred to as the road of death because many people would just go under ice. The political trucks, we will see them. So they would just go in one line, and the car would just fall down under the water. Would be just taken by the waters, and this was it. And they couldn't stop to help because otherwise they would have go down with them. So it's So, and it's just incredible that the winter would finish like in the end of April, which is a very rare case because normally, like it's February now and it's like 0 temperatures most of the time. It was exceptionally long winter. Да, so we're gonna have +5 degrees centigrade. И это вот как раз как показывается, да, дорога жизни.
Они одну фару включают, чтобы немножко дезориентировать нацистов, потому что, ну, если 2 фары горит, очертания сразу понятно, здесь вот...
I didn't know that actually. So these are the Poluterka trucks. So that's how they looked. Lorries, better say lorries, because they could carry exactly 1.5 tons weight. So that's why poltara, which means 1.5. So they're called Poluterkas. And so normally there should be two traffic lights switched on, but they would switch only one to confuse the Nazis. Because if you have two lights, like you can definitely see the car, how big it is, and it's like an easy target. But with one, that would definitely cause confusion. So that was the thing. So you see, they're going on ice. People, everything, and evacuation wasn't free. You were supposed to pay for the evacuation, provided that you provided the document that's like proven that you have paid for everything, like for all the bills. You pay for the evacuation, and you go.
Ленинград, здесь у нас кабель представлен, кусочек кабеля, да, сколько на уровне изоляции, прикладывали очень. Ну, я имею в виду, что...
Да. И об этом не знали немцы, немцы об этом не знали.
Они видели, что корабли на ладоге работают, обстреливали, но что это делать?
And I also mentioned you that I have no idea how, but the Soviets managed to lay the cable under Lake Ladoga. So you can see the multiple layers of insulation, if it's called the insulation, so you can see. And it was running, like it was working. So just the cables, the electricity. Amazing.
Ну, вот этот известный прибор, по-русски называется прогибограф, измерял прогибы льда, чтобы наиболее прочную трассу построить. И измерили, что вода идет с определенной скоростью подо льдом. Если машина идет со скоростью 40 километров, то лед проваливался. И очень часто удивлялись, почему машина, которая идет быстрее, она не проваливается, а машины, которые идут с определенной скоростью, они проваливаются. Вот регистрировали скорость, выяснили, что нужно ехать больше, чем 40 километров в час, либо больше, либо меньше. Ну, не ровно, потому что там колебания свободны.
So that's interesting. There's probably no translation for this name of the equipment. This equipment helped measure the deformation of ice under in different speed at which the cars, so those Poluterka cars, would be moving, and it was made from makeshift materials. Это же какой-то кусок града, да? And this is, you can imagine that there was no like free material that you could just experiment with. So the physicists of Leningrad, they managed to invent this. This is the section of the rails of the embankment, just one of the railings of the embankment. So, and they managed to find out that to come up with the recommended speed at which the trucks, the lorries, would not go under ice. So, and they found out that 40 kilometers per hour was the most dangerous speed, and at this speed the trucks were really likely to go underwater, under ice. So it was like either you were supposed to go quicker or slower. It's called прогибограф, but I'm sure there is no translation to that. So this is just the instrument that helped differentiate the deformation of ice under the speed, well, with the speed and also the weight of the lorries. Okay, hold on. Допустим, I hope you managed to understand. I managed to just to deliver the information. Okay. Right. Thank you so much. And you see, so especially springtime was very dangerous, and the trucks, those lorries, Poluterka lorries, would go with actually without any doors. so that the drivers could just jump from the sinking car. And and you see a lady here, so she was basically signaling the itinerary, so how to go, where to walk, where to go on ice. У нас с вами 41 минута всего. Да. Да. Ну, самое интересное на самом деле это вот, да. So, сейчас я быстренько объясню, да. So we're going to have 5 minutes of Q&A at the very end of the tour, because the museum actually should close exactly at 6 p.m. local time, right? And it's like 21 minutes till 6 p.m. And before that, so we have like 15, 16 minutes. So we're going to have several rooms, but trust me, the most interesting part we have just seen. And here we have just a few things to cover.
Здесь люди выходят на уборку улиц, потому что на улице грязь, на улице трупы валяются в большом количестве, люди успевали убирать. Естественно, это все грозило эпидемией. Нацисты делали ставку на эпидемию, они ждали, что сейчас эпидемия начнется, люди все умрут, а они просто займут город и не тратят ни единой пули.
Да, не пролив ни единой капли крови. Да. So you see here the subotniks. I told you the subotnik come from the word subota, right? Saturday. So these were traditionally the days when people would go to voluntary works, voluntary works, just cleaning the places. And in the siege, they would also do the same. They would basically, so there was no sewage system working. So to clean the streets from waste, from the bodies, because the bodies were just laying in piles everywhere. And of course, when with spring coming, there was a big risk, of different epidemics. And the Nazis were aware of that too, obviously. And it was their plan. So the epidemic starts, and then more people would die, and they would just come to the city, like the door would fly open in a way, right? And they would just come, take in the city without dropping a single drop of the Nazi blood. So this is, and then when the spring came, and with the approach of summer, the green started growing, and you can see the cabbage growing in the downtown, in the boulevards, in the Tchaikovsky streets. So, and I think you can definitely, this one is familiar. I show it multiple times to you. So cabbage growing just next to the St. Isaac's Cathedral. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Wendy. Yes, and in April, trams started going again. So the electricity returned, well, for a few hours, for a few hours only, but it was a good sign. So people kind of, they bucked up. They had hope all of a sudden. And it was much easier to just spend 40 minutes, hour waiting for a train or a tram rather than walking on your own. So the trams, I think in one of the tours, I took you to that station, which would supply electricity to the trams. So it's a very important place for Leningrad.
Выдают земли, говорят, что они должны сами заботиться о второй блокадной зиме. Уже все понимают, что блокадная зима сложная, что не факт, что мы уже справимся с тем, что происходит, уже никаких людей нет, и люди начинают свои дороги высаживать. Детки работают.
And obviously, the lessons of the first most severe winter were learned, and there were multiple instructions on how to prepare for next winter, how to prepare, how to grow your own food. There would be many books, and manuals issued, and people, the children, they were growing stuff. Nobody was stealing from the plots, of the neighbors. People started growing the supplies for the next winter because nobody believed that they would finish in no time.
И также в Ленинград начинают приезжать разные делегации,
Oh my goodness. And then in 1942, the delegation started somehow penetrating the city. So the delegations will be coming and they would be bringing gifts. So this is the pryanik, like the gingerbread. Yes, some sort of a gingerbread. Traditional, like a kind of a gingerbread in Russia, from the city of Tula, town of Tula. It's known for its gingerbread. Kühlbacken. I just try to remember the German word for it. Okay, probably it's the wrong one. I'm so sorry. My German is horrible, horrible state. Yeah, so this is the delegation from Kazakhstan in 1942. Like it was dangerous, but they came. They managed to come. Yes. So and food was taken to the city, including the deers from Karelia.
Ну и людям нужна была пища не только физическая, нужна пища духовная, культура, потому что нужно было как-то отвлечься от тех ужасов, которые творились вокруг, и искусство в этом помогало.
Yes. So and since there is a little bit of nourishment back to the city, there was again some place for culture. And you remember that we spent the entire hour talking about the culture in the besieged Leningrad. The puppets. Well, I'm sure you know Adolf Hitler, the Nazi officer, Nazi soldier, the puppets used in the theaters. Oh. Right. So so the theater troops would be coming to the front line with their performances, trying to make the Soviet soldiers laugh. And if you laugh your enemy in the face, then it's like you're no longer that scared, right? Thank you, everyone. Gimner. Look at these caricatures. Petrov. It's this Soviet and the artist of the siege, one of them. So so these are the sketches for the performance. The faces zoo or something like that. So this is Hitler, this is Goering, this is Goebbels, and Himmler, Goebbels and Himmler. Oh my goodness. Okay. Yes, of course. On the 9th of August, 1942, the Siege Symphony was finally premiered in the besieged Leningrad, and you remember that we talked about it in detail. So I even switched it on for you, and you can see the photographs and even the instruments that were played exactly on the premiere night of the Siege Symphony in the State Philharmonics. Нет, не бесплатно. Yes, and again, this wasn't free of charge. You had to buy tickets, and there was line. There were long lines, to buy the tickets. And people actually they had money because there was nothing really to buy with the money other than food, the very scarce food. Yes, you had to pay. You had to pay. Thank you, Dalia. So some of the theaters were working, and in one of the theaters, like the comedy theater, in just a year, there were like 13 premieres. Тут рассказывал, 13 премьер было за один сезон, просто вот в театре комедии. So 13 premieres of performances. So people would come and binge watch anything because they needed to get away from it. Yes. Yes, and this is the desk of Olga Bergholz. So she was the news of the besieged Leningrad. She was an anchor on the radio, and she would read her own poems. She was a poet, and she also had diary, several diaries actually. she managed to hide them, so they survived, and we now have them printed and they're translated into many languages of the world. And so her voice, which was also recorded, and then it was heard through the megaphones in the besieged city, it was the savior for many people, including herself. So once she was walking and she was exhausted, she was just about to fall, and if you fall down, it's most likely that you are not going to rise. So, and she heard a voice and she managed to stand up, and it turned out it was her own voice. So, это ее какие-то вещи, да? С ее... Все говорят, что потрясающий музей, что это просто одна из лучших экспозиций, просто которые они видели. Thank you so much, everyone. It really means all your kind words. I see them. I just cannot, just say it like to each and every one of you, but I'm saying really, thank you so much. I see every comment. I see every kind word. It means a lot. It means a lot. Thank you so much. Okay, we move on. We're pressed for time, but thank you. Как он называется? Тральщик. Тральщик. Собирал мины.
Собирал мины, да, чтобы водное пространство. Он был полегче, мины не взрывались, он мог их собрать, и потом корабли приходили.
Oh, I had no idea. So this is not actually...
Это подводная лодка.
Я думала, что да, это подводная лодка. So this is the model of a submarine, okay? And this is the small ship. I'm not sure if I don't know the translation really. It's a rocket science to me. Okay, so but this is the ship that it was very light. So when it just navigated on the mines, they wouldn't work. They wouldn't go off. So it could collect the mines somewhere, take them somewhere, so where they could be deactivated. Feel free to translate those who can. Тральщик, okay, I'll find out. Тральщик, okay.
Кто работал на заводах. Дети, мальчик Саша,
oh my goodness.
14 лет.
Boy, 14 years old, Sasha Romanov worked at the factory.
И он не только выполнял нормы, он ее в 3-4 раза выполнял, который для взрослых устанавливался. Вот за это медаль героя.
And you know, they were also the norms, the standards which you were supposed to meet like every day. And he managed to actually outperform himself like two times, and he was given an award for it.
Которая была столеваром. Она после уже начала войны, после того, как муж ее умер, она пришла работать на завод, освоила эту профессию, и здесь у нас представлен ее рабочий инструмент, по фотографиям видим.
Ага. Как его зовут?
Дороthea Блинова.
Dorothea Блинова. She was a widow. Her husband died. And she came to the factory and she was making steel. I'm not sure if you can actually boil, but she was making steel, and she is here in the picture with the tool she used for it, and there is an original. Just have a look. Можете подойти, да, чтобы было видно, какой огромный это ковш. So 18 kilograms, a huge spoon to make steel. 18 kilograms. That's very small lady, Dorothea, would be lifting and juggling and whatnot. So look at Alice and the huge thing for the steel making. Amazing, amazing. Thank you, everyone. I mean, this outpouring of your support is unbelievable. And you see here, so this is different things for the front line that were manufactured in the besieged city, right? In the besieged Leningrad under bombings, and it was all taken to the front line.
Оливково-зеленая ленточка, оливковый цвет, цвет победы, зеленый цвет жизни.
So, and people were given this medal, this award. So the olive and green light. So the green is the color of life, and the olive is the color of victory. Правильно, я не перепутала, да?
верно. И вот эту медаль получали не только те, кто защищал, да, военные границы, но и те, кто в городе вносил свой вклад, и работники заводов, и радиоработники, музыканты, все, кто как-то способствовал.
So, and this medal was given, not only was given to the people in the front line, right, protecting the city, but it was also given the workers of the front line, for the hinterland. So, in the besieged city. So, people working for the radio, the theaters, in the factories, everywhere. Сколько таких было всего выдано? 470 тысяч? So 470,000 Leningraders were given this award, and somewhere over 1 million was given like all over the country. Okay, almost 1.5 million medals were given, awards were given. Да, давайте про него расскажем, да, конечно.
Здесь вот представлен квадратный метр земли, взятый с Невского пятачка в 1942 году. Вот все железо, которое здесь лежит, оно вот так на квадратном метре земли находилось. Его не собирали вокруг. То есть можно представить, какое количество железа там было. Оно было от того, что там постоянно взрывались бомбы, которые скидывали нацисты.
There was a piece of territory. It's called the Nevsky Pятачок, the very small plot of land by the Neva River. Yes. Yes. So on the map, you could cover that plot of land with a coin, like 5 kopecks coin. Вот такая, да, какая-то была совсем, ну, маленькая. It was very, very, very small coin, something like that. Well, that's why it was called like Nevsky Pятачок, like the size of a 5 kopecks, the Soviet currency. Где? Right.
Несколько раз сдавали, несколько раз занимали.
Obviously, the Soviet army tried to break the siege. They tried to push through, and that territory would be once taken and then again given back, taken and then again taken back from either from Nazis to the Soviet army. And there were so many losses. And this is the soil, like the ground from that place, from the Pятачок, Nevsky Pятачок. It was taken there with all this iron, with all these things. It was placed in the museum. For a long time after the war, nothing would grow there. This is how much iron, steel, and blood was there. Have a look. It's all original. Like it's not like the recreation. It's not the copies. It's just as it was. Knowing this can be close to you, become a reality again. So it's just how the deployment on the Nevsky Pятачок territory.
Конечно, партизаны тоже там сложно в плане, что не только военные, партизаны, которые были уже на оккупированной территории, да, в тылу врага, они вели свою строительную деятельность, искусство.
And the partisans, of course, they helped a lot. They would normally live in the woods in the occupied territories. They would live in the woods, and they would try to attack unexpectedly to undermine the forces of the enemy. Yes, the breaking of the siege. So we know of the complete and partial breaking of the siege. So the bottleneck, this is the territory, this is the Schlüsselburg. So when on the 8th of September, Schlüsselburg was occupied. So this is when the siege from the land started. And this is the bottleneck, so very narrow plot of land. Yes, so Leningrad, Lake, Ladoga, right? So, and this is that bottleneck.
И в январе 43-го года с двух фронтов одновременно выходят три армии Ленинградской области. И спустя 6 дней они встречаются в районе рабочих постов 1,5 и нацисты подвигают. За эти 6 дней большое количество людей.
Больше 100 тысяч. So in the end of 1942, the Operation Iskra, like the spark, was worked out, okay, and then it was launched in January. and the forces from the Leningrad front line and from the Volkhov front line, they met to attack the Nazis and to oust them, to push them backwards. In those it was several weeks of the fights, more than 100,000 Soviet soldiers died. Да, конечно, самое такое, да. So not 10 weeks, just about a week. And it was named the partial breaking of the siege. So it happened on 18th of September 1943. And then the да, ага.
Ее строится 18 дней буквально, и первый поезд приходит на Финляндский вокзал спустя полтора года они ходили дорогу, называют дорогу победы, потому что победили.
And so when the complete lifting of the siege happened in полтора месяца, in 18 months, I thought, yes, in 18 months they managed to build a railroad, and by that railroad the first train came to the yet besieged Leningrad. So this is it. So the first train in 1.5 years. 7th of February. Yes. So 18th of January. This is when the partial breaking of the siege took place, and then on the 7th of February, the first train came. Well, obviously, then this railroad of life would be also referred to as the death corridor, because the Nazis would heavily attack the railroad, but yet it was the breath of fresh air. So the hall of victory. So this is the Oranienbaum bridgehead, the one that was never occupied by the Nazis, thanks to the ships of Kronstadt. So this is Kronstadt. We were there for tours in the summer. And so there was also a small road of life from Kronstadt to Leningrad on the waters of Gulf of Finland. It was very small, like, because the distance was small, yet it was, you can imagine how difficult it was to arrange all that. The troops came from there, from the bridgehead through Kronstadt, from Kronstadt to Leningrad. From Leningrad to Oranienbaum, and then from Oranienbaum, the other way around. So from Leningrad to Kronstadt, Oranienbaum bridgehead, and then to the front line. Yes. January Thunder. No. So by January 27th, 1944, the Nazis will be pushed 100 kilometers, like around 50 miles from Leningrad, so from where they were. So 700, but villages, settlements, towns would be freed, liberated. On the Field of Mars, January 27th, there would be the big celebration fireworks. So in all those original warning signs, they would be all covered with the paint. They would be painted, so nobody would see those traces of the recent events. And you see what was left, right? Peterhof, just walls and the gaping holes of desperation instead of windows. Despair. Yes. По-моему, нас уже закроют тут. They're gonna leave us here. Да?
Я была в этом до пандемии, я как раз успела съездить, там прям тоже потрясающий музей русско-немецкий находится в этом месте, сейчас это
The
часть
Capitulation
закрыли.
Act.
Вот видно, как подписывают акт. Акт сам, здесь не копия, конечно, представлена.
This is the copy of the Capitulation Act.
И есть такая разница между нами и Европой.
Да,
в плане окончания
Yes.
Акт был подписан 8 мая, 23 часа 01 минуту по европейскому времени, поэтому не день окончания войны, это 8 мая, у нас День Победы 9 мая, потому что в Москве уже было 9.
Yes. And so when this act was signed, which happened in 11 p.m. and 11 and 1 minute p.m. on 8th of May, so by that time in Moscow it was already the 9th of May. Hence this very small difference between the dates, celebration dates. Yet the celebration date. Yeah.
Потому что патриотизм начал падать, и нужно было патриотизм возродить. До этого Сталин не отмечал День Победы, потому что это был не День Победы, а День спорта, потому что видели, сколько горя. Да, в 1963 году уже, в принципе, все забыли. И со временем все только помпезнее.
So these are important words by Alice. So when the war finished, Stalin would prohibit the celebrations of Victory Day because the people remembered the tears, the death, the losses, the damage. But by 1960s, when things started to be forgotten, right? So they needed to lift up the patriotic feelings in people, and they started the parades and all that being even pompous every year. So this is it. Yes, so many thanks to Alice. Without her, without the permission from the Administration Museum, this wouldn't have been possible. So many thanks to everyone who made it possible. Many thanks to all the words spoken by Alice, by me. Thank you so much for joining this very special, very difficult tour in difficult times. We have no idea what the future holds, but these are the lessons, right? This is our past, and thank you so much for joining for this tour to try again to learn from the mistakes of the past. We'll be moving slowly towards the exit because it's actually time for the museum to close down. We've already been a bit too long here. So, and I will go through the chat. Okay, I'm going through the chat. Questions. Thank you, everyone, for all these kind words, for all the hearts. It means a lot. All these words of support. I mean it. It's essential. Thank you. I'm going through the chat. Hopefully, I'm not going to stumble into anything like a fire extinguisher. Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Denise. Everyone. Thank you. Okay, it's dark. So they're switching up. So you're here. Yeah, so it's like a VIP visit to the museum. It's like just us, the individual tour. I wish I could have shown you also the other beautiful interiors, but we will do that. Hold on. We will do that. This is the Tanya Savich's diary, the exact copy of her diary. That's the one. Okay. So loads of pictures, how it would be at schools, children in bikinis, and most of the time children in bikinis would have to spend in the shelters. And you know the stories, like I shared some of them with you. So yes. Susanna, sorry you joined us, but we are wrapping it up. Thank you so much. It's so important to know that we have your back and you have our back, and we are in your prayers and your thoughts. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Алла, спасибо вам большое, Алиса. Это просто было великолепно. И спасибо, что вы сказали все, что вы сказали. Спасибо вам большое. So, just in case you're taking postcards, we would really appreciate some of them if you could share. We would also share with the museum, thanking the administration for making this happen. And I would like to wrap up this tour by showing you the poster. And if you have any more questions, feel free to find me on Instagram while it's still there, or on Facebook if it's still there, because I'm not sure what has happened over these 2 hours. Ну да, потому что я отключила уведомления. I have no idea what's going on in the world. Thank you so much, everyone. I mean it. Please, everyone. Like, I wish I could just thank each and every one of you individually. Thank you. Thank you for supporting us. Thanks so much. And many thanks to Hago, because you know that they decided to read their commission for the time being till early March for these tours in support of Ukraine and the Russian guys. Thank you so much for doing that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Hago. Thank you, everyone. Your support, your understanding of the situation, it means everything to us. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.